Ambassador Sarah Chun stood in the center of the Great Hall. The room was huge, bigger than any building she had ever seen on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Above her head, the ceiling stretched. So high that she could barely see the top dot. All around her sat the representatives of 47 different alien species. Some looked almost human, but most were very different. The Zephyrians looked like living glass sculptures that changed color when they moved. The Corvinth were twice as tall as humans, with thick gray skin and sharp teeth. The hegemony delegates had 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Sarah had been coming to this place for 3 years now. She was Earth's voice in the Galactic Council, speaking for all of humanity. For 300 years, humans had been part of this great alliance of species that ruled most of the galaxy. They were the newest members, still trying to prove they belonged here among the stars. But today was different. Today, Sarah knew she was not here to speak for Earth. She was here to listen to Earth's punishment. The charges were read in the old language that all council members had to learn. Sarah understood every word, even though they felt like ice in her heart. The council said humans had built too many warships. They said humans had taken over too many planets. Worst of all, they said humans refused to give up their old ways of governing themselves. The alien species around her made sounds of agreement. Some clicked their claws against their chairs. Others made low humming noises. The Zephyrians flashed bright, angry colors. They all thought the same thing about humans. Sarah thought about all the human colonies spread across dozens of star systems. Each one had its own government, its own laws, its own way of doing things. This was how humans had always lived, even back on Earth. But the Council wanted all members to follow the same rules, to think the same way, to become part of one big government that the Council controlled. Humans had refused. They said they would follow Council laws when dealing with other species, but they wanted to keep their own ways at home. This made the other species angry and afraid. High Arbiter Veltar of the Hegemony stood up to speak. He was the leader of the Council, chosen by all the species to make the final decisions. His 4 arms moved as he talked, and his red eyes glowed brighter. The human species has shown that they cannot follow Council law, he said. His voice was deep and echoed through the Great Hall. They build ships when we tell them not to. They make colonies when we say they have enough. They keep their old governments when we tell them to join the Council system. Sarah wanted to speak, to defend her people, but this was not the time. For that, the trial was over. This was the judgment. For 300 years, we have tried to teach them our ways, Veltar continued. We have been patient. We have given them chances. But they do not learn. They do not change. They remain what they have always been, a wild species that cannot be tamed. The other representatives made more sounds of agreement. Sarah saw some of them looking at her with what might have been pity. Others looked angry or disgusted. A few seemed almost pleased that this day had finally come. The vote will now be taken, Veltar announced. All in favor of removing humanity from the Galactic Council? One by one, the species voted. The Zephyrians flashed white, which meant yes. The Corvinth raised their right hands. The bird-like aviarians sang a high note. Each species had their own way of voting, but the meaning was always the same. Yes. 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 40-6 species voted to throw humanity out of the Council. Only the humans voted no, but Sarah's voice was lost among all the others. When the voting was done, Veltar stood again. The Great Hall became completely quiet. Even Sarah could hear her own heart beating. By the ancient laws of the Council, humanity is no longer a member of our alliance, Veltar said. All treaties between humans and Council species are ended. All trade agreements are cancelled. All cooperation is finished. He paused, and his red eyes seemed to look right through Sarah. "You have 7 of your solar cycles to remove all humans from Council space," he continued. "Every human colony, every human ship, every human person must return to your home system. After 7 cycles, any human found in Council territory will be treated as an enemy." Sarah felt her legs go weak, but she forced herself to stay standing. 7 solar cycles meant 7 Earth years. It seemed like a long time, but she knew it was not nearly enough. There were millions of humans living on hundreds of worlds. Moving them all would be the biggest challenge her species had ever faced. "Do you understand these terms?" Veltar asked her directly. Sarah looked around the hall. One more time. She saw species that humans had fought beside in wars. She saw others that humans had helped when disasters struck their worlds. She saw some that humans had saved from extinction. But none of that mattered now. Fear was stronger than friendship, and the Council was afraid of what humans might become. "I understand," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was breaking. But then she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She smiled. "But I want you to remember this day," she said, speaking loudly enough for every being in the hall to hear. "You are making the biggest mistake in Council history. You think you are getting rid of a problem, but you are creating something much bigger than a problem." Veltar's eyes grew brighter. "Explain your meaning, human." Sarah took a deep breath. She thought about her home planet, blue and green and beautiful, spinning around its yellow star. She thought about the human colonies, full of people who had left everything behind to build new lives among the stars. She thought about the human ships, sleek and fast, and built by people who never gave up. "You are freeing us," she said simply. "For 300 years, we have followed your rules, used your technology, lived by your laws. We did this because we wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. But maybe we were wrong. Maybe we were not meant to be just another member of your council." The hall was completely silent now. Every being was listening to her words. "You want us to go back to our home system and stay there like good little pets," Sarah continued. "But humans do not make good pets. We never have. We explore, we build, we grow. We never stop pushing forward, no matter what stands in our way." She looked directly at Veltar, meeting his burning red gaze without fear. "So yes, we will leave your space. We will take our people and our ships and our colonies. But we will not go quietly into the dark. We will build something new, something better. And someday, when you need our help, you will remember that you could have had us as friends." With that, Sarah turned and walked toward the great doors of the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind her, she could hear whispers starting among the representatives. Some sounded worried now. Others sounded angry. But Sarah did not look back. She had delivered humanity's last message to the Galactic Council. Now it was time to go home and prepare for the greatest challenge her species had ever faced. They had 7 years to leave Council space and start over somewhere else. 7 years to prove that humanity did not need the Council to survive among the stars. 7 years to build an empire of their own. The message reached every human colony within 3 days. From the mining stations around Kepler 442 to the farming worlds in the Centauri cluster, the same words appeared on screens and speakers across human space. Admiral Marcus Webb had written it himself, sitting in his office on Luna Command while Earth turned slowly below him. All human citizens living in Council territory must return to Earth system immediately, the message said. We have 7 years to complete evacuation. This is not a request. This is an order for the survival of our species. Webb watched the responses come in from across the galaxy. Some colony governors were angry. Others were scared. A few asked, if this was some kind of joke. But Webb knew it was real. He had been in contact with Ambassador Chun since the moment she left the council chambers. The easy thing would have been to panic. The smart thing might have been to negotiate, to beg the council for more time or better terms. But humans had never been known for doing the easy or smart thing. They were known for doing the impossible. Webb called a meeting of all the colony leaders. Using quantum communication arrays that stretched across dozens of star systems, he brought together the voices of humanity's far-flung empire. Governors, mayors, ship captains, and station commanders all appeared on his screen at once. They want us to come crawling back to Earth with our tails between our legs, Webb told them. They think we will abandon everything we have built and hide in our home system like scared children. They are wrong. Captain Maria Santos spoke from the screen. She led the colony on New Terra, one of the most successful human settlements outside Earth system. What are you suggesting, Admiral? We cannot fight the entire council. We are not going to fight them, Webb replied. We are going to leave, just like they want. But we are not leaving empty-handed. He activated a star map that showed all of human space. Red dots marked the colonies that were inside council territory. Blue dots showed the independent human settlements that had been built beyond council borders. There were fewer blue dots, but they were spread across a much larger area. We are going to take everything, Webb announced. Every building, every machine, every piece of technology we can move. We strip our colonies down to the bare rock and transfer it all to the independent settlements. By the time we are done, the council will get back empty worlds while we will have built the foundation of something much bigger. The colony leaders stared at him through their screens. Some looked confused. Others looked excited. A few looked like they thought he had lost his mind. Dr. Elena Vasquez was the first to speak. She ran the research station at Alpha Centauri, where human scientists had been working on projects that made the council nervous. Marcus, what you are talking about is the largest moving operation in history. We would have to transport entire cities across hundreds of light years. Yes, Webb said simply. That is exactly what we are going to do. The plan was crazy enough that it might actually work. Every human colony had been built using modular construction. Buildings could be taken apart and put back together somewhere else. Factories were designed to be moved when resources ran out. Even the planetary defense systems could be dismantled and relocated. What made it possible was the one thing the council had always underestimated about humans: their willingness to sacrifice for each other. When the evacuation order went out, volunteers came forward from every corner of human space. People left comfortable jobs on established worlds to help build new colonies on harsh frontier planets. Families packed up their entire lives and moved to places where the air was still being made breathable, and the ground was just being prepared for farming. The Great Consolidation, as historians would later call it, began 6 months after the council's judgment. The first phase involved moving the smaller outposts and research stations. These were easier to dismantle and transport, and they served as practice for the bigger operations to come. Captain Lisa Park commanded one of the transport fleets. Her ships carried the entire population of Research Station Gamma 7 along with all their equipment and data. The station had been studying alien plant life that might be useful for terraforming. Now that research would continue on a new world beyond council reach. The hardest part is not the moving, Park wrote in her personal log. The hardest part is watching people say goodbye to homes they have lived in for decades. But there is something beautiful about it too. These people are not running away. They are running towards something better. The big colonies took much longer to move. New Terra had over 2 million people and cities that stretched across 3 continents. Moving everyone and everything would take years, but the colonists threw themselves into the work with the same determination their ancestors had shown when, first leaving Earth. The Council watched all this activity with growing confusion. They had expected humans to comply with the evacuation order, but not like this. Reports came back to the Council chambers describing massive human fleets carrying industrial equipment, entire research labs, and even pieces of planetary infrastructure. Some Council members began to worry that they had made a mistake. High Arbiter Veltar dismissed these concerns. "Let them take their toys," he told the other Council leaders. "Without our protection and our trade networks, they will struggle to survive on their frontier worlds. In a few decades, they will come back begging to rejoin us." But the humans were not just moving their colonies. They were improving them. Dr. Vasquez led a team of scientists who used the evacuation time to upgrade everything they could. Better. Fusion reactors replaced the old ones. New manufacturing systems that could build almost anything were installed on every world. Advanced life support systems that could turn the most hostile planet into a garden were tested and deployed. "We are not just moving," Dr. Vasquez explained to her research team. "We are evolving. The Council made us follow their rules and use their technology. Now we can build things our way." The improvements were dramatic. Human technology had always been different from Council designs. Where Council species built things to last forever, humans built things to be changed and improved. Where Council technology was safe and predictable, human technology was experimental and flexible. Freed from Council regulations, human engineers could finally push the boundaries of what was possible. The new colonies that rose beyond Council space were unlike anything humans had built before. Cities that could change their layout based on the weather. Factories that could switch from building starships to growing food with just a few hours of reprogramming. Defense systems that learned from each attack and became stronger. But the most important change was not in the technology. It was in the people. As the evacuation continued, humans began to see themselves differently. They were no longer junior, members of someone else's civilization. They were pioneers building something entirely new. Communities that had been separate for generations came together during the move. Scientists worked alongside farmers. Soldiers helped build schools. Artists designed new flags and symbols for worlds that had not existed 5 years before. The shared struggle of the evacuation created bonds that were stronger than any government or law. By the 4th year, the transformation was complete. The red dots on Admiral Webb's map had gone dark one by one as the Council colonies were abandoned. But the blue dots had multiplied and grown brighter. Where once there had been a handful of struggling frontier settlements, now there was a network of thriving worlds that stretched across a quarter of the galaxy. The final evacuation ship left Council space exactly 7 years after the judgment, just as the deadline required. But something else happened on that same day. The independent human colonies formally declared themselves the Terran Commonwealth, a new nation among the stars with its own laws, its own military, and its own destiny. Ambassador Chun, now serving as the Commonwealth's first foreign minister, sent a message to the Council. It was short and polite, but it carried a meaning that would echo through history. "The evacuation is complete," the message said. "Humanity thanks the Council for teaching use that we never needed your permission to be great." 5 years had passed since the last human ship left Council space. In the great shipyards orbiting New Kandra, the sound of construction never stopped. Massive metal frameworks stretched for kilometers in every direction, holding the skeletons of ships that would make even Council admirals nervous. Captain James Rodriguez walked through the main construction bay, watching hundreds of workers in zero-gravity suits attach armor plating to the hull of the newest battlecruiser. The ship was enormous, twice the size of anything humans had built while they were Council members. But size was not the most impressive thing about it. The impressive thing was how different it looked from any other ship in the galaxy. Council. Ships were built like fortresses, thick and heavy, and designed to last for centuries without major changes. Human ships looked like they were ready to pounce. They had smooth curves and sharp angles that suggested speed and power. Every line of the hull was designed for one purpose: to move fast and hit hard. How long until she is ready? Rodriguez asked the construction chief. 3 more months for this one, the chief replied. But we already have 20 more just like her in various stages of construction. The Indomitable class is going to be the backbone of our new fleet. Rodriguez nodded as he studied the ship's design plans on his tablet. The weapons systems alone were revolutionary. Instead of the steady, predictable energy beams that Council ships used, human vessels carried rapid-fire plasma cannons that could overwhelm enemy shields with pure volume of fire. The engines used a new type of fusion drive that could push the ships to speeds that violated several Council safety regulations. But the real breakthrough was in the ship's computer systems. Council vessels relied on centralized command networks that made them vulnerable to system failures. Human ships used distributed processing that allowed every part of the vessel to think and react independently. If the bridge was destroyed, the engineering section could still fight the ship. If the weapons were damaged, the engines could be used as weapons. The Council taught us to build by their rules, Rodriguez said to himself as he watched the workers. Now we build by ours. The shipyards were just one part of what was happening across Commonwealth space. On the planet Haven, construction crews were building the new capital city of New Geneva. Unlike the ancient Council capital with its formal chambers and rigid protocols, New Geneva was designed to be flexible and democratic. President Elena Santos stood on the steps of the new Parliament building, looking out at the growing city. She had been elected just 6 months ago in the Commonwealth's first system-wide election. Every human colony had been allowed to vote, from the biggest worlds with millions of people to the smallest research stations with just a few hundred inhabitants. The election itself had been remarkable. Instead of the appointed positions and hereditary titles that dominated Council governance, every leader in the Commonwealth had to earn their position through the support of the people they served. Santos had won not because of her family connections or her species affiliation, but because humans across dozens of worlds believed she could lead them into the future. Citizens of the Commonwealth, Santos said to the cameras that would broadcast her speech across human space, we stand at a moment in history that our ancestors could never have imagined. 5 years ago, we were exiles, cast out by those who feared what we might become. Today, we are the founders of a new kind of civilization. She gestured toward the city growing around them. Construction robots worked alongside human crews to build structures that combined the best of human engineering with technologies learned from their former Council partners. But everything was built the human way, modular, adaptable, ready to be improved as new ideas emerged. We were told that we were too aggressive, too independent, too unwilling to accept the wisdom of our elders, Santos continued. We were told that we would fail without the Council's guidance. They were wrong about the failure, but they were right about one thing. We are different. We do not accept that the way things have always been done is the way they must always be done. The Commonwealth's growth was unprecedented in galactic history. What had started as a handful of frontier colonies had become a network of over 100 worlds in just 5 years. Each new planet that joined brought something valuable: resources, expertise, population, or simply the strategic advantage of another foothold among the stars. But the Commonwealth's real strength was not in its size or its technology. It was in its philosophy. Unlike the Council's rigid caste system where each species had a predetermined role, the Commonwealth operated on pure merit. It did not matter what world you came from or what you looked like. If you had the skills and the dedication, you could rise to any position. This attracted people from across the galaxy. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had been one of the Council's top xenobiologists before she defected to the Commonwealth. The Council's research committees had blocked her work for years, claiming it was too dangerous or too theoretical. In the Commonwealth, she was given unlimited funding and a team of the brightest minds from a dozen different species. The Council talks about diversity, Dr. Tanaka explained to her new research team. They have representatives from dozens of species, and they think that makes them wise. But they all think the same way. They all follow the same rules. They all fear the same changes. True diversity is not about what you look like. It is about how you think. Her team included humans, of course, but also several alien species that had grown tired of Council restrictions. The Kithara were master engineers, whose homeworld had been strip-mined by Council, mandate to provide resources for other species. They brought construction techniques that could build cities in space or underwater with equal ease. The Wanderer fleets had roamed the galaxy for centuries, never settling on any world, but serving as traders and explorers. They found purpose in Commonwealth exploration missions, using their knowledge of hidden jump routes and uncharted systems to help the growing nation expand safely. Even some species that were still officially Council members began sending research, exchanges, and cultural missions to Commonwealth space. These diplomatic missions often included their best scientists and engineers, who coincidentally discovered that their research was much more productive in Commonwealth laboratories. Council watched all of this with growing alarm. Reports flowed into the chambers on Nexus Prime, describing human fleets that seemed to appear and disappear at will, colonies that sprang up overnight on worlds that should have been uninhabitable, and technologies that violated everything the Council thought they knew about Physics.High Arbiter Veltar called emergency sessions to discuss the human problem. Some Council members suggested military action to stop Commonwealth expansion before it became unstoppable. Others argued for diplomatic contact to establish boundaries and prevent conflicts. They are like a cancer, declared Representative Cruz of the hegemony. Every year they grow larger and stronger. Every year more species are tempted to join them or copy their methods. If we do not act soon, they will become too powerful to control. But other voices in the Council urged caution. The Zephyrians, who had always been among the most cautious species, pointed out that the Commonwealth had not attacked any Council worlds or threatened any Council citizens. Their expansion was happening in unclaimed space or on worlds that freely chose to join them. Perhaps, suggested Elder Zara of the Crystalline Collective, we should ask ourselves why so many choose to leave our protection for theirs. What are they offering that we are not? The question hung in the Council chambers like an uncomfortable truth that no one wanted to acknowledge. For 1,000 years, the Council had been the ultimate authority in the galaxy. Species joined them for protection, for trade, for the privilege of being part of something larger than themselves. The idea that someone might build something better was almost impossible to accept, but the evidence was mounting. Commonwealth worlds reported higher standards of living, faster technological advancement, and greater personal freedom than most Council colonies. Their military, though smaller than the Council's combined forces, was clearly more advanced and more flexible. Most disturbing of all, they seemed genuinely happy. President Santos ended her speech with words that would be remembered long after the buildings around her had crumbled to dust. "We did not choose exile," she said, "but we embrace the freedom it has given us. We will continue to grow, to explore, to build something worthy of the best that thinking beings can achieve. Not through fear or force, but through the simple belief that every individual has the right to reach for the stars." As her words spread across Commonwealth space and beyond, a new chapter in galactic history was being written. The exiles had become empire builders, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first sign that something had changed came through the Council's intelligence networks. Agent Crix of the Hegemony Security Division sat in his darkened office on Nexus Prime, reading reports that made no sense. According to his sources, massive human fleets were operating in the Outer Rim territories. Not the small exploration groups or merchant convoys that might be expected from a recently exiled species, but full battle fleets with hundreds of ships. "This cannot be accurate," Crix muttered as he studied the data. His best informants reported human colonies on worlds that his own scientists had declared uninhabitable. Mining operations that extracted resources faster than Council technology should allow shipyards that built vessels in months rather than years. More disturbing were the reports of alien species joining the humans voluntarily. Entire Cathara engineering guilds had vanished from Council space, only to resurface in Commonwealth territory. Wanderer fleets that had traded with the Council for centuries now avoided Council stations entirely. Even some minor Council member species were asking uncomfortable questions about their membership benefits. Crix sent his findings up the chain of command, but High Arbiter Veltar dismissed them as exaggerations. Primitive species often seem more advanced to those who observe them from a distance, Veltar declared. The humans are probably using outdated Council technology and calling it innovation. They will collapse within a decade when their equipment breaks down and they have no one to repair it. But the reports kept coming, and they kept getting more incredible. Human ships that moved faster than anything in Council databases. Energy weapons that produced power outputs beyond known safety limits. Defensive systems that seemed to violate several laws of physics. The Council's certainty began to crack when long-range sensors detected something that should have been impossible. A large fleet was approaching the edge of Council space, moving in perfect formation and broadcasting Commonwealth identification codes. The ships were sleek and powerful, clearly built for war, but flying under diplomatic flags. High Arbiter Veltar stared at the tactical display in the Council's command center. 24 ships approached Nexus Prime, led by a massive vessel that dwarfed even the Council's heaviest battleships. The fleet moved with a precision and confidence that spoke of long experience and superior training. "Should we activate the defense grid?" asked General Morvac of the Corvinth Defense Forces. Veltar considered the question. The approaching fleet could probably destroy the orbital defenses around Nexus Prime if they chose to fight. But they were flying diplomatic flags and had requested permission to enter Council space through proper channels. Attacking them without cause would make the Council look weak and afraid. Let them approach, Veltar decided, but keep all defenses ready. The Commonwealth flagship that entered orbit around Nexus Prime was a work of art disguised as a weapon. The hull curved and flowed like liquid metal, but sensor scans revealed armor that was stronger than anything the Council had ever developed. Weapon ports were hidden beneath smooth surfaces that could open and fire in milliseconds. The engines glowed with a blue light that indicated fusion technology far beyond Council standards. Ambassador David Park materialized in the Council chambers 3 hours later, transported down from his ship by a matter transmission system that made several Council scientists very nervous. He was younger than Sarah Chun had been, but he carried himself with the same quiet confidence that had marked her final speech to the Council. "Honored representatives," Park said as he bowed slightly to the assembled aliens around him. "The Terran Commonwealth extends greetings to the Galactic Council and formally requests the establishment of diplomatic relations between our sovereign governments." The silence that followed was complete. For several long seconds, no one in the chamber moved or spoke. The words Park had used were simple enough, but their implications were staggering. He was not requesting to rejoin the Council as a member species. He was asking for recognition as an equal power. Representative Cruz of the hegemony was the first to find his voice. You speak as if your collection of exile colonies constitutes a legitimate government. The Council does not recognize territorial claims made in violation of our original exile decree. Park smiled politely. With respect, Representative Cruz, the Commonwealth controls over 300 star systems and governs more than 50 billion sentient beings. Our territory extends across regions of space that the Council has never visited, let alone claimed. We are not asking for your permission to exist. We are offering to establish formal relations with your government. The number of systems under Commonwealth control sent whispers through the chamber. 300 systems represented more territory than many Council member species controlled. If the human was telling the truth, they had built an empire that rivaled the largest powers in known space. High Arbiter Veltar leaned forward in his chair. You claim to control 300 systems. You claim to govern 50 billion beings. These are impressive numbers, Ambassador Park. But numbers can be fabricated. How do we know you speak the truth? Because we brought proof, Park replied simply. He activated a holographic projector that filled the center of the chamber with a three-dimensional map of Commonwealth space. Star systems glowed in blue light, connected by trade routes and communication networks. Each system showed detailed information about population, resources, military assets, and industrial capacity. The Council representatives stared at the display in growing amazement and alarm. The Commonwealth was not just larger than they had imagined. It was more advanced, more organized, and more powerful than most Council member species. Worse yet, it was still growing. New systems were being added every month as more species chose to join the humans rather than remain under Council protection. This is impossible, whispered Elder Zara of the Crystalline Collective. No species has ever expanded so quickly or achieved such technological advancement in such a short time. Humans are not like other species, Park explained. We do not accept that something is impossible simply because it has never been done before. When you exiled us, you forced us to stop following your rules and start following our own. The results speak for themselves. The holographic display shifted to show Commonwealth military assets. The numbers were smaller than the Council's combined forces, but the technology was clearly superior. Commonwealth ships moved faster, hit harder, and defended better than anything in Council fleets. More importantly, they were organized under a unified command structure that could respond to threats in days rather than months. Representative Cruz stood up angrily. This display proves nothing except that humans remain as arrogant and aggressive as ever. You flaunt your military power and demand recognition as our equals. This is exactly why the Council expelled you in the first place. With respect, Park replied calmly, we are not demanding anything. We are offering something. The Commonwealth wishes to establish trade relations, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements with the Council. We believe both our civilizations would benefit from cooperation rather than isolation. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Traditional hardliners like Cruz demanded that the Council reject any recognition of Commonwealth legitimacy. They argued that accepting the humans as equals would encourage other species to rebel against Council authority. If the exiled humans could build a successful civilization, why should anyone remain loyal to the old ways? But other voices urged caution and pragmatism. The Zephyrians pointed out that the Commonwealth had not attacked any Council worlds or threatened any Council citizens. Their expansion was happening in unclaimed space, and their success was achieved through innovation rather than conquest. Some species were even secretly impressed by what the humans had accomplished. Perhaps, suggested Elder Zara during a recess, we should ask ourselves what we can learn from their success rather than how we can destroy it. The decision was taken out of the Council's hands when emergency alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Prime. Long-range sensors had detected something approaching from beyond the galactic rim. A massive fleet of unknown origin was moving toward Council space at impossible speeds, leaving destroyed worlds in their wake. The sensor officer's report was transmitted directly to the Council chambers. Unknown fleet composition estimated at over 10,000 vessels. Technology appears to be completely alien. They have destroyed 3 frontier colonies and show no signs of slowing down. Estimated arrival at the outer Council systems in 36 standard days. High Arbiter Veltar stared at the tactical display, showing the approaching threat. The alien fleet was larger than anything the Council had ever faced, and their weapons seemed capable of destroying entire planets. Even more terrifying, they showed no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply appeared, destroyed everything in their path, and moved on. The Devourers, Ambassador Park said quietly, using a name that would stick throughout the coming war. We have been tracking their approach for several months. Our long-range scouts first detected them beyond the Andromeda relay stations. All eyes in the chamber turned to the human ambassador. You knew about this threat? Veltar demanded. The first battle against the Devourers was a disaster. The Council fleet that met them at the Rim Station outpost followed traditional tactics that had worked for 1,000 years. Heavy battleships formed defensive lines, while smaller vessels provided support fire. It was a strategy that had defeated every enemy the Council had ever faced. The Devourers tore through the formation in less than 20 minutes. Admiral Sarah Chon watched the battle recordings from the bridge of her flagship, the CN's Defiance. She had come out of retirement when the war began, called back to service by a Commonwealth that needed her experience. Now she studied the alien tactics with growing concern. They do not fight like any species we have encountered, reported Commander Torres, her tactical officer. No formation flying, no command structure we can identify. Each ship seems to operate independently while somehow coordinating perfectly with the others. Chun nodded as she watched Devourer vessels flow around Council defenses like water around rocks. Their ships were organic-looking things that seemed to grow rather than being built. They moved in ways that violated physics, turning impossibly sharp corners and accelerating beyond what their apparent mass should allow. Intelligence. Estimates? Chun asked. Over 10,000 ships confirmed, but they keep appearing from nowhere, Torres replied. We think they have some kind of dimensional drive that lets them jump directly into combat without using normal hyperspace routes. And Admiral, their weapons ... double quotes. Chon had seen the weapons. Devourer ships fired beams of energy that seemed to unmake matter at the molecular level. Anything they hit simply stopped existing. Council shields, armor, even the empty space around their targets was consumed by the alien weapons. The intercom crackled to life. Admiral Chun to the communications center immediately. Chun found Ambassador Park waiting for her in the ship's main communications room. Behind him on the screen was High Arbiter Veltar, calling from the Council Command Center on Nexus Prime. The alien leader looked older than Chun remembered, his red eyes dim with exhaustion and fear. Admiral Chun, Veltar said without preamble. A council formally requests Commonwealth assistance in coordinating our joint defense efforts. We are prepared to place all Council military forces under your command. The words must have tasted like poison in the Arbiter's mouth. For 1,000 years, the Council had been the supreme military power in the galaxy. Now they were asking the species they had exiled to save them from destruction. What are your terms? Chon asked. No terms, Veltar replied. We are fighting. For survival, pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. Chun studied the alien leader's face on the screen. She could see the cost this admission had taken. But she could also see something else: genuine respect. The Council had finally understood what humans had been trying to tell them for centuries. Strength came not from rigid hierarchies and ancient traditions, but from the willingness to adapt and change when circumstances demanded it. "I accept command," Chun said simply. "Transmit all fleet positions and tactical data to my staff immediately. We have 3 days to prepare our defense at Sanctuary." Sanctuary was a fortress world that guarded the approach to the Council's core systems. It was surrounded by massive defense platforms and protected by the largest concentration of military ships in known space. If the combined Council-Commonwealth fleet could not stop the Devourers there, nothing could dot the preparations that followed, were unlike anything in galactic history. Council ships that had been built to different standards and operated under completely different doctrines had to be integrated with Commonwealth vessels that used unfamiliar technology and tactics. Human commanders found themselves giving orders to alien crews who had never worked with human methods. Alien officers struggled to understand Commonwealth battle strategies that emphasized speed and flexibility over raw firepower. But somehow, it worked. Dr. Yuki Tanaka led teams of mixed-species engineers who found ways to link Council and Commonwealth systems. Kithara construction experts worked alongside human technicians to upgrade weapons and shields on both types of ships. Wanderer navigators shared their knowledge of hidden jump routes that could be used to outflank the approaching enemy. "What you are seeing," Dr. Tanaka explained to a group of Council scientists, "is the power of true cooperation. Not the artificial unity the Council imposed, but genuine partnership between equals who choose to work together." The defense of Sanctuary began when long-range sensors detected the Devourer fleet dropping out of their dimensional drive at the FY edge of the system. Chun studied the tactical display from her command chair, watching as thousands of alien vessels formed their impossible formations. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun," she broadcast on the combined fleet frequency. "Today we fight not as Council or Commonwealth, but as free beings defending our right to exist. Show them what cooperation can accomplish." The battle that followed was the largest space engagement in recorded history. Over 8,000 ships from dozens of different species fought against an enemy that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of physics and tactics. The Council ships fought bravely, but their rigid formations quickly broke down under the Devourer assault. The aliens moved too fast and struck too hard for traditional tactics to work. Within the first hour, it looked like Sanctuary would fall just as quickly as the Rim Station had. Then the Commonwealth ships showed what they had learned during their years of exile. Human vessels broke from the main formation and began attacking the Devourers using hit-and-run tactics. They would appear from unexpected angles, strike hard, and disappear before the enemy could respond effectively. But more importantly, they began teaching these tactics to their Council allies in real time. Commonwealth ship commanders broadcast their attack patterns and shared their targeting data with nearby Council vessels. Slowly, the rigid Council formations began to evolve into something more flexible and deadly. "Follow the humans," ordered Captain Zeke of the Corvinth Heavy Cruiser Vengeance. Match their movements and learn their methods. The turning point came when a group of Devourer ships broke through the main defense line and headed straight for Sanctuary's orbital cities. Millions of civilians would die if the aliens reached their targets. The only ship positioned to intercept them was Chun's flagship, the Defiance. Chun looked around her bridge at the mixed crew of humans and aliens who had volunteered to serve under her command. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. We are going to show these things what happens when they threaten innocent people." The Defiance accelerated toward the lead Devourer ship, its weapons firing continuously. The alien vessel was larger and more heavily armed, but Chun's ship had something the enemy did not expect: the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. At the last moment, Chun activated the ship's self-destruct sequence and rammed the Defiance directly into the Devourer's core. The explosion lit up the entire battlefield and destroyed both vessels instantly. Chun's final transmission echoed across the combined fleet: for Earth, for the Council, for everyone who refuses to kneel to tyrants. The sacrifice rallied both fleets. Human ships pressed their attacks with renewed fury, while Council vessels adopted the aggressive tactics they had learned from their former enemies. Working together, they began to push the Devourers back for the first time since the war began. Battle lasted 18 hours. When it finally ended, the Devourer fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind the wreckage of thousands of their ships. The combined Council-Commonwealth force had won, but the cost was enormous. Nearly half their ships were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. In the aftermath, High Arbiter Veltar came aboard the Commonwealth command ship to meet with the surviving fleet commanders. He found Admiral Park, who had taken command after Chun's death, standing in the ship's memorial hall where the names of the fallen were being inscribed on crystalline walls. "I owe you an apology," Veltar said quietly. "The Council was wrong about humanity. We thought your independence was a threat to order and stability. We did not understand that it was your greatest strength." Park looked up from the memorial wall where Sarah Chun's name had just been added. "She told you this would happen, you know. Not the war, but the moment when you would realize that cooperation is stronger than control." Veltar studied the names on the wall. Humans, Kithara, Corvinth, Zephyrians, and dozens of other species who had died fighting side by side. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we rebuild," Park replied. "The Devourers will return eventually, and when they do, we will be ready. Not as the Council with the Commonwealth as junior partners, and not as the Commonwealth with the Council as allies. As equals, working together because we choose to, not because we are forced to." The war against the Devourers continued for 3 more years, but the alliance forged its sanctuary never broke. Council species learned human flexibility, while humans gained from Council experience. New technologies emerged from the combination of different approaches to the same problems. Most importantly, both civilizations discovered that their differences were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be celebrated. When peace finally came, the galaxy was changed forever. The rigid hierarchy of the old Council was replaced by a new alliance where
The message came on a Tuesday morning. Dr. Eric Miller was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee when the computers at NASA's Deep Space Communication Center began to light up. At first, he thought it was a malfunction. The pattern was too regular, too perfect to be random space noise, but it wasn't coming from any of their probes or satellites. "Get me the director," Eric said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Now, within hours, the facility was packed with scientists, military personnel, and government officials. Captain Samantha Wright arrived with a team of communication specialists. She walked directly to Eric, her uniform crisp, her expression serious. "Tell me what we know," she said. Eric pointed to the screen. "It's definitely artificial. The signal repeats every 73 seconds. We've ruled out all Earth origins and known space equipment." "So we're not alone," Samantha said, her voice low. "We never were," Eric replied. "But now they're talking to us." It took 3 days to decode the first part of the message. It was a mathematical sequence, followed by simple images, then more complex ones. Finally, there were words, not in English, but in a pattern that their computers could begin to translate. "They call themselves the Galactic Coalition," Eric explained to the emergency meeting of world leaders gathered via video conference. "And they're concerned about us, President." Laura Bennett leaned forward. "Concerned how?" "They say Earth is in contested space and that we're unprotected. They want to help us." General Frank Daniels frowned. "Do we need their help? Are we in danger?" Before Eric could answer, the screens in the room flickered. A new message was coming through stronger than before. This time there were images of ships, large, sleek vessels that were unmistakably not from Earth. "They're coming," Eric said. "They'll be here in 5 days." The world prepared as best it could. There was panic in some places, celebration in others. Religious groups declared it the end times or the beginning of a new age. The stock market crashed, then rebounded when people realized money might still matter. When the alien ships arrived, they did not descend to Earth. They positioned themselves in orbit, 3 massive vessels shaped like smooth teardrops, glowing with soft blue light. "We come in peace," came the translated message. "We request a meeting with your leaders." The meeting was set for neutral ground, an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. President Bennett would attend, along with leaders from China, Russia, India, and the European Union. Eric and Samantha were included as part of the scientific and military contingent. The alien delegation arrived in a smaller craft that hovered above the carrier deck before gently landing. When the door opened, Samantha's hand instinctively moved toward her weapon. The aliens were not what anyone expected. They stood on 2 legs but were slender and tall, with skin that shimmered slightly in the sunlight. Their faces had 2 large eyes, no visible nose, and small mouths. They moved with careful, deliberate steps. "I am High Commander SCI-FI," the leader said, their words translated through a device around what might be their neck. "We bring greetings from the Galactic Coalition of 3,000 Worlds." President Bennett stepped forward. "I am Laura Bennett, President of the United States. We welcome you to Earth." The meeting moved to the carrier's conference room. Maps of the galaxy were projected on screens, showing Earth at the edge of what the aliens called protected space. "Your world exists in a dangerous region," SCI-FI explained. "We are surprised. You have survived this long without oversight." "We've managed just fine," General Daniels said, his voice containing a hint of pride. The alien made a gesture that might have been a shrug. "You have been fortunate. The void has not yet found you." "The void?" Eric asked. "An aggressive force that consumes worlds. We have contained them for centuries, but they grow stronger. We offer Earth membership in our coalition. We will provide technology, knowledge, and protection." "And what do you want in return?" Samantha asked. SCI-FI turned to her, and she could have sworn the alien flinched slightly at her direct gaze. "Only reasonable cooperation. Resources, some bases on your world, and perhaps some of your people to join our defense forces." President Bennett nodded diplomatically. "We need time to consider your offer." "Of course," the alien leader said. "We will remain in orbit while you decide." After the meeting, as the alien delegation returned to their ship, Eric pulled Samantha aside. "Did you notice anything strange?" he asked. Samantha nodded. "They seemed nervous, almost afraid." "Of us? Why would an advanced civilization fear humans?" "I don't know," she said, "but I intend to find out." In the days that followed, more coalition representatives arrived. They established a temporary base in Geneva, Switzerland. They shared limited technology, medical advances, cleaner energy methods, more efficient farming techniques. But they were careful about what they revealed. Eric spent hours studying the aliens, learning their language, observing their behavior. He noticed they always kept distance from humans. They wore what appeared to be environmental suits, claiming Earth's atmosphere had impurities their systems couldn't handle. Samantha, meanwhile, focused on their ships and weapons. The aliens showed defensive systems but were vague about offensive capabilities. They spoke of protection but avoided details about actual conflicts with the void. 1 week after first contact, Eric was granted access to the Coalition's database of known species. As he browsed the information, he noticed Earth was classified as a Class X anomaly. That night, he met Samantha at a secure location away from listening devices. "They're hiding something," he said, showing her his findings. "Earth is the only Class X world in their database." "What does that mean?" she asked. "I don't know. But I found other references to humans specifically. Medical scans they've been taking without our knowledge. They seem particularly interested in our physical strength and endurance. Samantha frowned. You think they're afraid of us physically? That doesn't make sense. They have technology centuries beyond ours. Technology isn't everything, Eric said. Remember, evolution takes different paths on different worlds. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert on Samantha's phone. Coalition ships were deploying satellites around Earth without permission. They're moving too fast, she said, before we've even agreed to join them. Or they're preparing for something they're not telling us about, Eric added. President Bennett called an emergency meeting with coalition representatives. The aliens apologized for the misunderstanding about the satellites, claiming they were merely defensive measures. But as Samantha and Eric listened to their explanations, they shared a look of understanding. The aliens weren't telling the whole truth. Earth wasn't being offered protection because the coalition was generous. Earth was being prepared for something else entirely, and they needed to discover what before it was too late. The coalition moved quickly. Within 2 weeks of first contact, they had established outposts in 12 countries. They called them monitoring stations, necessary for Earth's protection. Each one was staffed with alien personnel and surrounded by security measures that kept humans at a distance. Dr. Eric Miller didn't like it. He sat in his office at NASA, reviewing the limited data the coalition had shared about galactic threats. Something didn't add up. The math is wrong, he said to himself, comparing their star charts with Earth observations. They're exaggerating the threat zones. His phone rang. It was Captain Samantha Wright. Can you meet me? She asked, her voice tight. I found something. They met at a diner 30 miles from the nearest coalition outpost. Samantha brought Lieutenant John Garrison, a quiet man with sharp eyes who worked in military intelligence. John managed to get inside the Denver outpost, Samantha explained once they were seated in a corner booth. Eric raised his eyebrows. How? Their security is focused on keeping humans out, not on tracking us once we're in, John said. They don't expect us to get past their outer barriers, but they underestimated how small spaces humans can squeeze through. He placed a small device on the table and tapped it. A hologram appeared showing alien text and images. I copied parts of their database, John continued. Most is encrypted, but we found these classified reports. Eric leaned forward, reading the translated text. Class X anomaly, potential resource, high-risk assessment. They're talking about Earth, Samantha said. And look at this. The image changed to show footage of alien ships retreating from battle. Dark, shapeless forms pursued them, tearing through their defenses. The void? Eric asked. John nodded. But here's the interesting part. These battles took place in our sector of space just 3 years ago. The coalition lost ground. They're not offering us protection because they're generous. They're setting up Earth as a buffer zone. Eric sat back, his mind racing. That explains why they're in such a hurry to establish outposts. They're preparing for war, not first contact. There's more, Samantha said. Show him the medical reports, John. The display changed again, showing what appeared to be comparative anatomy charts. Human figures stood alongside various alien forms. They've been studying us, John explained. Running tests without our knowledge. Blood samples, tissue analysis, strength measurements. They're particularly interested in our bone density, muscle mass, and endurance levels. Eric studied the charts. According to this, humans are physically stronger than most coalition species, significantly stronger. And more durable, Samantha added. We can withstand more G-force radiation and physical trauma than they can. They find it disturbing. Eric thought about how the aliens always maintained distance from humans, how they seemed nervous during direct interactions. It wasn't caution about Earth diseases. It was fear. They're afraid of us, he said. Physically, afraid, which makes us valuable, John said. They want human soldiers to fight the void. Samantha nodded grimly. Cannon fodder. The next day, Eric requested access to the coalition's science vessel that had arrived in Earth orbit. His status as lead human scientist granted him permission, though he noticed his alien escorts kept more distance than usual. The ship was impressive: smooth corridors, artificial gravity, and technology far beyond anything on Earth. But Eric wasn't there for a tour. He was looking for information. "I'd like to see your biological research facilities," he told his guide, a coalition scientist named Nira, "to understand how we might collaborate." Nira hesitated. "Such areas are restricted." "Then how can we work together?" Eric asked. Innocently. "President Bennett specifically asked me to explore scientific cooperation opportunities." The mention of Earth's leadership seemed to sway the alien. They proceeded to a laboratory where several coalition scientists were analyzing data. The room went quiet when Eric entered. On screens around the lab, he saw human medical scans, muscle, tissue samples, and what appeared to be endurance test results. "Fascinating research," Eric said, pretending not to notice the discomfort in the room. "What have you learned about human biology?" After an uncomfortable silence, one scientist spoke. "Your species is unusual. You evolved from predators yet developed high intelligence." "Is that rare?" Eric asked. "Very," Nira said. "Most spacefaring species evolved from herbivores or omnivores with minimal predatory instincts. Predator species rarely develop the cooperation necessary for advanced civilization." Eric nodded, filing away this valuable information. "And physically?" another scientist responded. "Your strength-to-weight ratio exceeds coalition averages by 35%. Your endurance, pain tolerance, and radiation resistance are similarly elevated. You heal faster than 89% of known species. Is that why you keep your distance from us?" Eric asked directly. The room fell silent again. Nira finally answered, "We are cautious by nature." Back on Earth, Samantha and John had made progress of their own. They had intercepted and decrypted more coalition communications. "They're lying about the void," Samantha told Eric when they reconnected. "It's not some mindless force consuming worlds. It's another alliance of species fighting against coalition control." "So this is about territory," Eric said, "not protection." "Exactly. And they want to use Earth as both a shield and a source of soldiers. They've been assessing our military capabilities, our resources, our population." That evening, they presented their findings to a secret committee of government, military, and scientific leaders. President Bennett listened silently until they finished. "Recommendations?" she finally asked. General Daniels spoke first. "We play along. Let them think we're considering their offer while we prepare our defenses." "I agree," Eric said. "They're underestimating us because we're technologically behind them, but they fear our physical capabilities. That gives us an advantage they don't expect. And we need to learn more about the void," Samantha added. "The coalition isn't telling us the truth. We need all the facts before we choose a side in their war." President Bennett nodded. "Proceed carefully. Dr. Miller, continue your research. Captain Wright, expand your intelligence gathering. If the coalition wants to use Earth as a weapon, they need to understand that weapons can turn against those who wield them." As the meeting concluded, a new message arrived from Coalition Command. They were requesting a joint training exercise with human military forces to demonstrate cooperation and test compatibility. "They want to see us in action," Samantha said, reading the message, "to confirm their theories about human combat potential." "Then let's give them a demonstration," General Daniels replied with a thin smile. "But not quite the one they're expecting." The game had changed. The aliens had come offering protection to a world they thought was weak and vulnerable. Now they would learn why Earth had survived without their help for so long. The day of the joint training exercise arrived 3 weeks after the Coalition's request. Captain Samantha Wright, now promoted to Major, stood on the deck of the USS Liberty, watching Coalition officers inspect the human soldiers lined up for the demonstration. The aliens moved cautiously, keeping their distance as they observed the men and women of Earth Special Forces. Sub-Admiral Nexil, the Coalition commander, approached Samantha with what she now recognized as nervous respect. "Your warriors appear adequate," Nexil said, the translation device at his throat pulsing with blue light. "Though they seem small, Compared to our combat units, Samantha smiled. Size isn't everything, Sub-Admiral. Before Nexel could respond, alarms blared across the ship. A coalition officer rushed toward them, his movements quick and agitated. Sub-Admiral, our sensors detect a Void Scout vessel entering the system. It will reach Earth orbit in 6 hours. Nexel's skin paled to an almost white shade. We must evacuate our personnel immediately. It is standard procedure when encountering Void forces in unprotected space. You're running away? Samantha asked, her voice sharp. I thought you came to protect us. This is merely a scout, Nexel explained hurriedly. Our response must be measured. We will return with proper forces once. Let us join you, Samantha interrupted. A small human contingent. Consider it part of our training. Nexel hesitated, his large eyes blinking rapidly. It would be irregular. You have no experience with space combat. Then we'll observe. Learn how you handle these situations. After a brief communication with his superiors, Nexel reluctantly agreed. Samantha quickly selected her team, Lieutenant John Garrison and Corporal Lisa Rodriguez, a Marine with exceptional combat scores. 2 hours later, they boarded the coalition vessel. The ship was sleek and efficient, but Samantha noticed immediately that it had none of the redundant systems or battle damage controls that human military vessels would have. Everything was designed for optimal function with minimal crew. You will remain on the command deck, Nexel instructed. Observe only. Do not interfere with operations. Samantha nodded, but exchanged knowing glances with Garrison and Rodriguez. They had their own plans. The coalition ship accelerated to meet the Void Scout before it could reach Earth. Sub-Admiral Nexel seemed confident now that they were away from the planet. The scout is likely gathering intelligence, he explained, to the humans. We will drive it away with minimal engagement. Dr. Eric Miller watched from Earth, monitoring communications from both ships. President Bennett stood beside him in the secure command center. They're keeping us in the dark, Eric said, filtering what our people can see and hear. Can you bypass their systems? The president asked. Eric nodded. Working on it now. Their technology is advanced, but their encryption is designed to keep other coalition species out, not humans specifically. On the coalition ship, the encounter with the Void Scout began as expected. The alien vessel was dark and angular, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. It made no response to coalition hails. Standard Void tactics, Nexel explained. We will fire warning shots to establish dominance, then. He never finished his sentence. The Void ship suddenly accelerated, launching what appeared to be energy weapons at the coalition vessel. The ship rocked violently. Direct hit to our primary systems, a coalition officer shouted. Power fluctuations in all sectors. Nexel froze, his command staff equally stunned by the unexpected attack. This is not standard behavior for a scout vessel. Another hit rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed across the command deck. Smoke began pouring from control panels. They're not following your playbook, Samantha said, steadying herself against a wall. What's your backup plan? Nexel had no answer. His crew was panicking, some abandoning their posts as systems failed around them. Samantha looked at Garrison and Rodriguez. Time to observe more closely. They moved quickly, taking control of abandoned stations. Rodriguez accessed the weapon systems, while Garrison analyzed the damage reports. Samantha positioned herself at what appeared to be a tactical HFY display. Your main power coupling is severed, Garrison called out. Reroute through the secondary grid. Nexel stared in shock. How do you know our systems? We've been studying your technology, Samantha replied. Just like you've been studying us. Rodriguez worked the weapons console with surprising skill. Your targeting system is overthinking the problem. The Void ship has a pattern. Simple, predictable movements. She fired the coalition weapons, hitting the Void vessel directly. The enemy ship shuddered and pulled back. Meanwhile, Samantha had identified the Void's attack strategy. They're not trying to destroy you. They're testing your defenses, looking for weak points. Classic predator behavior. Predator? Nexel repeated, his voice shaking. You speak as if... As if I understand how they think? Samantha finished for him. I do, because humans think the same way. The battle continued for nearly an hour. What should have been a simple encounter turned into a serious engagement. 3 coalition crew members were injured when a control panel exploded, exposing them to radiation that their bodies couldn't handle. To Nexel's amazement, the humans showed no fear of the radiation. Rodriguez worked directly in the affected area, refusing protective gear that would slow her down. The radiation levels are within human tolerance, she explained when questioned. We evolved on a planet with higher background radiation than most coalition worlds. With the humans' help, the coalition ship eventually drove off the Void Scout. The victory came at a cost, significant damage to the vessel and several injured crew members. But it was a victory nonetheless. As the ship limped back toward Earth, Nexel approached Samantha and her team. Your assistance was unexpected, he admitted, and your methods unorthodox. But effective, Samantha pointed out. Yes. Nexel seemed troubled. You function well under stress. You take risks our species would avoid. You exposed yourselves to radiation levels that would kill most coalition species. It's how we survived on Earth, Garrison explained. Adaptability, quick thinking, taking calculated risks. Back on Earth, Eric had successfully broken through the coalition's information filters. He and President Bennett had witnessed the entire encounter. They didn't expect that, the president said, watching the coalition ship approach Earth once more. They thought they were recruiting cannon fodder. Instead, they found wolves. Eric nodded. And now they're afraid of what they've discovered. That night, Coalition High Command held an emergency meeting in orbit. They didn't know that Eric had access to their communications now, that he could hear every word. The humans exceed all combat projections, a coalition general reported. Their reaction time, radiation resistance and adaptability are unprecedented. This changes our strategy, another voice said. They are not merely resources to be used against the Void. They are potential threats themselves. We must reconsider our approach to Earth, High Commander Zixvar concluded. These humans are more dangerous than we realized. Eric listened carefully, recording everything. The truth was finally emerging. The Coalition hadn't come to protect Earth. They had come to use it. And now they were beginning to realize their mistake. Word spread quickly through the Coalition fleet about the human performance during the Void encounter. Major Samantha Wright and her team returned to Earth as heroes, but she felt uneasy about the way the alien officers now watched them, with a mixture of respect and fear. Dr. Eric Miller worked tirelessly in his lab, analyzing the data he had intercepted from Coalition communications. He recruited Kevin Hayes, a brilliant programmer from the NSA, to help decode the more complex transmissions. I've never seen encryption like this, Kevin said, his fingers moving rapidly across his keyboard. It's like they're thinking in 3 dimensions while we think in 2. But you can break it? Eric asked. Kevin smiled. Already did. They're smart, but they didn't design their security to keep out humans specifically. The decoded messages revealed more than Eric had hoped for. The Coalition had been discussing Earth in much more detail than they admitted publicly. Look at this classification, Eric said, pointing to a section of text. They've labeled humans as an apex predator species. There's a warning attached to all reports about us. Kevin read the translation. Caution, unpredictable behaviors, high aggression potential, extreme environmental adaptability. They make us sound dangerous. To them we are, Eric replied. Most Coalition species evolved from herbivores or non-aggressive omnivores. Their records show very few predator species ever developed spacefaring technology. Why not? Predators tend to be territorial, competitive, more focused on immediate gains than long-term planning. At least that's how they see it. Eric scrolled through more data. According to this, only 8 predator species have joined the Coalition and all are heavily restricted. Kevin whistled. So we're rare. We're unique, Eric corrected. Look at these physical comparison charts. Humans have higher bone density, more efficient oxygen use, better temperature regulation, and faster healing than 94% of coalition species. That can't be right, Kevin said. We're not that special. It's all relative. Earth has higher gravity than most habitable worlds, more radiation, more climate variation, more pathogens. We evolved to survive in what the coalition considers extreme conditions. Eric continued scrolling through the data. Their scientists are amazed by things we take for granted. Our ability to run long distances, our pain tolerance, how we can function despite sleep deprivation or injury. So when Major Wright and her team kept fighting after that radiation exposure, it confirmed their worst fears about us, Eric finished. What we consider normal, they consider terrifying. Later that day, Eric met with Major Wright and President Bennett to share his findings. The meeting took place in a secure room swept for listening devices. They've been keeping this information secret even from their own citizens, Eric explained. Most coalition species have no idea humans are physically superior to them. Why the secrecy? President Bennett asked. Fear of panic, Samantha suggested. Imagine learning that a new species that's stronger, tougher, and more aggressive than you just joined the galactic community. Eric nodded. Exactly. And there's more. The coalition isn't a peaceful federation of worlds. It's an empire. The herbivore species at the top maintain control through technology and numbers. They don't fight their own battles. They find others to do it for them, Samantha said. Like us. And the void isn't a mindless force, Eric continued. It's a coalition of species fighting against coalition control. Their consuming worlds is actually liberation in some cases. President Bennett leaned back in her chair. So we're caught between two sides in a galactic war we didn't know existed. And both sides now want us for the same reason, Eric added. Our combat potential. The president looked grim. Options? We need more information about the void, Samantha said. Before we pick a side, we should know what both are truly offering. Agreed, Bennett replied. But we also need to prepare for the possibility that neither side has Earth's best interests at heart. As the meeting concluded, an aide rushed in with urgent news. Coalition ships were moving, repositioning themselves around Earth. More were arriving daily. They're not waiting for our decision anymore, Samantha observed. They're getting ready for something. That evening, Eric received a secure message from Nira, the coalition scientist he had met on their research vessel. The message was sent through channels outside official coalition communications. Human scientist, the message read. I risk much to send this. You must know the truth. The coalition high command fears what they have discovered about your species. They debate whether Earth is too dangerous to include in our alliance. Some suggest more drastic measures. Eric immediately forwarded the message to Samantha and the president. Within an hour, Earth's military forces were placed on high alert. In space, the coalition fleet continued to grow. 17 ships now orbited Earth, their weapons not pointed at the planet, but positioned where they could fire quickly if needed. Samantha organized training exercises, pushing human soldiers to demonstrate their capabilities while coalition observers watched. She wanted them to see exactly what humans could do. We need to make them hesitate, she explained to her commanders. Show them we're not easy prey. Eric, meanwhile, worked with Kevin to access more coalition databases. They discovered detailed studies of Earth's military history, analyses of human warfare that labeled Earth as exceptionally conflict-prone. They're studying our wars, Eric told Samantha. They seem particularly disturbed by how quickly we advanced from swords to nuclear weapons. What frightens them most, she asked. Our adaptability, Eric replied. The fact that humans can learn to use alien technology so quickly, that we can improvise weapons from almost anything, that we keep fighting despite injuries that would incapacitate their species. Samantha nodded thoughtfully. Then we use their fear to our advantage. The next day, she requested a meeting with Sub-Admiral Nexel. They met on the deck of an aircraft carrier, the sea breeze ruffling Samantha's uniform as Nexel kept his customary distance. My superiors are concerned about the growing coalition presence in Earth orbit, Samantha said directly. It seems less like protection and more like preparation for action against us. Nexel's skin paled slightly. We simply ensure your safety. Then, perhaps you could explain these, Samantha said, producing copies of the intercepted communications discussing drastic measures against Earth. Nexel's large eyes widened. How did you— We have capabilities you've underestimated, Samantha interrupted. Just as you've underestimated our awareness of what's happening. She stepped closer, noting how Nexel instinctively moved back. Let me be clear, Sub-Admiral. Earth did not need coalition protection before we knew about you, and we do not need it now. We are not your soldiers to command, nor your problem to solve. What are you saying, Major Wright? I'm saying that the coalition should reconsider how it approaches Earth, as equals, not as resources. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. After all, you've seen what humans can do when threatened. As Nexel departed, visibly shaken, Samantha knew the message would reach Coalition High Command quickly. The game was changing. Earth was no longer just responding to alien decisions. They were making demands of their own. The warning came at dawn. Coalition sensors detected a massive fleet entering the solar system. Not a scout vessel this time, but a full invasion force of void ships, dark and menacing against the stars. Dr. Eric Miller was woken by the emergency, alert. He rushed to the command center where President Bennett and military leaders had already gathered. Coalition High Command is requesting an emergency meeting, an aide announced. Minutes later, the holographic image of High Commander Six-Var appeared before them. The alien leader's usual calm was gone, replaced by visible anxiety. A void armada approaches, Six-Var said without preamble. Larger than any we have encountered. Our forces are outnumbered. What are you suggesting? President Bennett asked. We must withdraw our ships to protect coalition core worlds. We recommend Earth prepare for possible void contact. Major Samantha Wright stepped forward. You're abandoning us. It wasn't a question, and Six-Var didn't deny it. We will return with reinforcements when possible. When possible? General Daniels repeated with disgust. You came here offering protection, and now you're running at the first sign of real danger. Six-Var's image flickered. The situation has changed. The Void Fleet will reach Earth in 12 hours. Our ships will depart in 2. After the transmission ended, silence filled the room. Then President Bennett turned to her advisors. Options? Eric spoke first. The coalition is showing its true colors. They never intended to protect Earth, only to use us. Can we fight the Void ourselves? Bennett asked. General Daniels shook his head. Not directly. We have no space combat capabilities that could stop that many ships. Samantha had been studying the tactical displays. We might not need to stop them all. Coalition intelligence suggests the Void Fleet has a command structure. Take out their leaders and the rest might retreat. But how? Eric asked. Samantha turned to him, a determined look in her eyes. We have 10 hours before the coalition leaves. That's 10 hours to learn everything we can from their technology. Eric nodded, understanding immediately. And we know humans can adapt to alien tech faster than they expect. President Bennett made the decision. Do it. Whatever you need, you have it. The next hours were a flurry of activity. Eric and Kevin Hayes worked with coalition scientists, some willing to help, others reluctant. Samantha and John Garrison studied void combat tactics from coalition records. Earth's military forces mobilized globally. With just 1 hour before the coalition departure, Eric presented their plan to President Bennett and the military command. We can't match their numbers, he explained, but we've modified several coalition shuttlecraft. They've agreed to leave them behind. Agreed or been convinced? General Daniels asked with a slight smile. Let's say they saw the wisdom in cooperation, Samantha replied. The shuttles have been enhanced with human control systems. We've also adapted some of their weapons technology to our aircraft. The key is their targeting systems, Eric continued. Coalition weapons are designed to attack in specific patterns, predictable, logical. but void ships move irregularly, making them hard targets. So we're changing the system, Kevin added, making it more human, intuitive rather than programmed. President Bennett looked skeptical. And this will work? The coalition doesn't think so, Samantha said. They believe we're doomed, but they don't understand human unpredictability. That's our advantage. As the coalition ships prepared to leave, Samantha led a team of pilots to the modified shuttles. Corporal Lisa Rodriguez and Lieutenant John Garrison were among the volunteers. The controls are simplified, Eric explained, as they boarded. We've made them respond more like aircraft. Trust your instincts. From the command center, Eric and President Bennett watched as the coalition fleet jumped away, leaving Earth to face the void alone. Only 3 coalition scientists remained behind, including Neera, who had chosen to stay and help. Your people are brave, Neera told Eric as they monitored the approaching void fleet. But the odds are impossibly high. Eric smiled. Humans have a long history of beating impossible odds. The void arrived exactly as predicted. 57 ships, their surfaces seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved into position around Earth, ignoring the few human vessels that rose to meet them. They're not even considering us a threat, Samantha reported from her shuttle. Just as we expected. Earth's defense consisted of 20 modified shuttles and 40 fighter jets equipped with adapted coalition weapons. Against 57 massive war vessels, it seemed like nothing. Then Samantha gave the order, "Execute Plan Trojan, now." The human vessels scattered, not engaging directly but targeting specific points on the largest void ship, what coalition intelligence identified as the command vessel. The void defenses were slow to respond, clearly not viewing the small craft as significant threats. That was their mistake. The modified weapons didn't fire in predictable patterns. They adjusted continuously, guided by human pilots who improvised, who took risks no coalition pilot would consider. From his shuttle, John Garrison targeted the command ship's communication array. "They're scrambling now," he reported. "Their response time is slower than we expected." "Keep pressing," Samantha ordered. "Don't give them time to adapt." On the ground, Neera watched in amazement as the human pilots performed maneuvers that coalition simulations had deemed impossible. They pushed the shuttles beyond design limits, accepting damage that would have caused coalition pilots to retreat. "They don't stop," she whispered to Eric. "Even when hit, they continue fighting." "That's humanity," Eric replied simply. The battle reached its peak when Lisa Rodriguez's shuttle took a direct hit. Systems failing, she aimed her damaged vessel directly at the Void command ship's main weapon array. "Rodriguez, pull back," Samantha ordered. "Negative," came the calm reply. "I can make this count." Her shuttle crashed into the Void vessel, triggering a chain reaction that disabled its main weapons. In that moment of vulnerability, the remaining human forces concentrated their attack. The Void command ship began to break apart. The rest of their fleet, suddenly disorganized, pulled back from Earth. Victory came at a cost. 8 shuttles lost, 15 pilots dead or injured, but Earth remained free. 3 days later, the coalition fleet returned with reinforcements, prepared for a prolonged battle. They found instead a planet celebrating victory and salvaging Void technology. High Commander Zixvar requested an immediate meeting with Earth's leaders. This time, the coalition representatives came to the White House, where President Bennett received them with cool formality. "We are impressed by Earth's survival," Zixvar admitted. "Such an outcome was deemed statistically impossible." "Perhaps your statistics failed to account for human determination," Bennett replied. "Indeed." The alien commander seemed uncomfortable. "In light of recent events, we wish to revise our offer of coalition membership. Earth would join as a full partner, with equal standing." Samantha, standing beside the president, caught Eric's eye across the room. They both recognized what had happened. The balance of power had shifted. Earth was no longer seen as a primitive world needing protection. It was a force to be reckoned with, a planet of apex predators who had succeeded where the mighty coalition had expected failure. "We'll consider your offer," President Bennett said. But on our terms, not yours. As the meeting concluded, Eric overheard two coalition officers speaking quietly. They defeated a void fleet with primitive technology and modified shuttles, one said. Imagine what they'll do with access to our full technology. The universe will never be the same, the other replied. Eric smiled to himself. They had finally learned the truth about Earth. Humans didn't need protection. The galaxy needed protection from them.